It is Tuesday, August 1st, 2023. This is another edition of Baseball Today. That is not my man, Trevor Plouffe. It is trade deadline day, so we have an active major leaguer in Vinnie Pasquantino, the Kansas City Royals, back with us. I am Chris Rose. Producer Dan's along for the ride as well. No, don't worry, Plouffe has not been traded. He's doing some other John Boy Media business, and he will rejoin us later in the week or early next week or whatever it is. But Vinnie, it's good to see you, man. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks for having me back. I'm locked in on this trade deadline right now. It's fun to refresh Twitter every few seconds to see if something comes through. The Royals announced their own trade yesterday. They announced it before reporters got to it, so good on them. That was cool.
What are you talking about?
They traded our reliever Jose Cuas for outfielder Nelson Velasquez from the Cubs.
I didn't know that.
Yep, that happened yesterday.
Okay. All right, well, if you get any breaking news over the next half hour or hour that we're on AMP, please let us know, okay?
I really hope something happens while we're on. That'd be great.
Okay. All right. Well, something happened last night in Toronto. Namely, Austin Hayes continued his amazing year. I mean, all-star, and then in the ninth with two on, the O's hanging on to a two-run lead, makes a diving catch of all diving catches. That's why he is my tip of the cap. What a great year that dude's had, huh?
Yeah, incredible. Those are my favorite catches where you're looking at the center fielder and then all of a sudden the left fielder comes out of nowhere and just dives and makes a catch, almost an out-of-screen catch. The Orioles are dangerous. They're a very scary team. It'll be interesting to see if they do anything today to get a little bit more scary.
Well, I said it on yesterday's show. I feel like their lineup is World Series caliber. Their bullpen is World Series caliber. If they add a high-end starting pitcher, and we're going to get into this momentarily, I think in an American League where you can't pick a favorite at this point, they got a real good shot.
Yeah, there's a certain pitcher that is currently probably in Kansas City because the New York Mets are playing the Kansas City Royals tonight, who this guy went to Old Dominion University. He's a certified Hall of Famer with a full no-trade clause. And we'll see if he waives his no-trade clause to potentially go to a team in orange today. We'll see.
Ooh, we're going to get to that in all just a second. But first, it is trade deadline day. So when you're watching this, I'm sure there's a bunch of trades that have happened. But let's talk about a few that definitely already did. You had Seattle and Cleveland, two teams that are both in contention, whether it's wild card or division. Interesting moves on Monday. Mariners handed their closer, Paul Sewald, over to Arizona for three guys. Josh Rojas is the active major leaguer that is there as well. Donnie Canzone, who's been up and down with Arizona, is another guy. And then Bliss is a double-A infielder for them. And in the meantime, the Guardians sent their most consistent and veteran starting pitcher, Aaron Civale, who pitched very well in the month of July, to the Rays for a top 40 prospect. Vinny, would you need an explanation if you were a veteran player in either of those respective clubhouses, Cleveland and Seattle, as to why you made those sort of moves?
Yeah, I would say as like an established veteran in that clubhouse, probably, just because you are probably a little bit confused. But the new school way of thinking about relievers is trade them when they're at their hottest, because I'm talking about the Seattle trade here, because there's a lot of, it's not, I don't want to compare it to a running back situation in the NFL, but there's a lot of, the careers aren't that long. And when they're hot,
there's a lot of volatility.
Yeah, a lot of volatility there. And they've got Andres Munoz, who's going to just move right into that closer role. And they did the same thing with Sewald a few years ago when they traded Kendall Graveman. And then Sewald moved up into the closer role. And now they're just doing it again. They were able to get some guys back that'll help them now and later. And then from the Cleveland end, probably a little bit confusing for the guys in the clubhouse. They have a few really good younger starters. And then they've got McKenzie and Quantrill, who you would know better than I would if they're going to come back this year. That move kind of says to me that they think they're going to come back because they believe that they'll have their pitching for the playoffs if they make it. And they get a guy back at a position of relative need. They've got two first basemen on their roster. So maybe one of them gets traded today. Who knows? But that one's a little bit confusing. But I think if you're Jose Ramirez, you're probably a little bit curious why my best friend got traded last week, and now that you're traded one of our best starters.
Yeah, you're talking about his best friend, Ahmed Rosario, who got dealt to the Dodgers last week. So let's start with the Cleveland side of things. That's whose cap I'm wearing, by the way. It is a position of need, meaning they need more guys that can hit consistently. Yeah. You see that team. They're grinding out 4-2 victories, 3-1. It puts an awful lot of pressure on your pitching staff. So I understand that. But Josh Naylor's been one of the best hitters in baseball over the last 3 months. It's probably been the least told story in the game. Josh Bell has a player option for $16.5 million. Based on the season he's had, he is going to pick that up. And he is basically immovable unless they eat probably at least half of that contract for next year, if not more than that. So what they need, they need outfielders. I would have understood it if this kid Manzardo played outfield. I would have been like, okay, that makes sense. But this isn't softball where you can have 3 first basemen and go stick them in right field for an inning. This is a different sport, Vinny.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. And I'm curious to see what the Josh Bell market might be, because it's probably somewhat similar, maybe probably less value than the Teoscar Hernandez market right now. It's just kind of a DH bat, and because he can switch hits, so he can hit from both sides of the plate. So you're probably looking at that right now. So probably those similar teams like the Blue Jays. Who else is in on Teoscar? The Phillies, I think. So looking at some of those teams who might potentially use him. But yeah, it's interesting. That deal's definitely interesting, and we'll see how it works out. I would assume Manzardo is going to be up soon, maybe not this year, but early next year, and you'll see the return on that trade sooner rather than later.
Yeah, well, he's banged up right now with a shoulder issue, which is something that you know all about, unfortunately. But yeah, with the Mariners, it's not as bad as the Kendall Graveman trade, because last night Mariners players weren't motherfucking the deal. I mean, but I remember 2 years ago, that's essentially what they were doing. It's a little different because they traded Graveman to the team that they were chasing at the time in the Houston Astros. Right. This time, Sewald's getting shipped not only out of the division, but out of the league. I will be curious to see if Jerry DiPoto does anything. I think it's a misstep if he thinks that his team can't do something, because their starting pitching is so good if they can get into the playoffs. And they're not that far out of the wild card chase. If they can get into it, they're as dangerous as anyone, don't you think?
Yeah, their starting pitching makes it really tough, because I look back at that Nationals team that won the World Series, who was just built off of really good starting pitching. And you just see similarities there of like that team can make a run quick. So who'd they get rid of yesterday? Sewald, AJ Pollock. Yep. That's who they got rid of. But Pollock wasn't really producing to the level that they wanted him to in any way or shape or form. So that one was probably okay. But yeah, you get rid of your closer, and it's just, probably a little bit of confusion there. But I still think they can make a run. We'll see what they do today. I love the trade deadline.
Oh, I do too. And final thing here with the Cleveland stuff. Maybe it's just because I'm a pessimist, but I am worried. Quantrill will come back. I don't know about McKenzie, and I don't know about Bieber. And these kids that they've brought up, who's now makes up 60% of their starting rotation, in Tanner Bybee, Gavin Williams, Logan Allen, who've all pitched pretty well so far, are going to run out of their innings limits. It's going to happen. So this feels like a car that's going down a freeway in which they have a chance to finish a race in a, subpar division, but they could run out of gas heading into the final lap, and that's going to be a problem.
Yeah, as a fan, I don't know if I'd be too happy, and in the clubhouse, I don't know how happy the clubhouse is.
Yeah,
but if you try to look at it from the outside, maybe they're looking at next year potentially.
I get it, but you have to be able to. One thing they've done really well over the last decade is thread a needle through both this year and looking to the future. They've been one of the better ones. All right, let's move on to the Chicago Cubs, who picked up Jeimer Candelario from the Nats, but they lost their opener in the series against Cincinnati. So they're 5 out in the division. They're 3.5 out in the wild card. More importantly, Marcus Stroman continued to struggle. Last night gave up 6 earned in 3 innings. Third straight time where Stroh failed to get out of the 4th inning. Now, let's remember, he is a free agent to be with no compensation attached to him at the end of the year. Did Chicago miss the opportunity to sell high on him?
No, and I think it's the same thing you were just talking about with Cleveland, which is they're going for it. So they're keeping their guys, the guys that they want around. They're keeping them and they're making an honest run at the thing. And I think that there's a lot of respect to be had for that. There must be something going on with the blister that he had, because that seems to be the turning point of when he started to not pitch as great. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens over the next few weeks, because he hasn't been as great as he was. That's an understatement, but he hasn't been as great as he was at the beginning of the year. But Bellinger, those are your two guys that they were looking at to trade, and then things turned around for the Cubs. They're only 3.5 out. They get Candelario, who I've seen for a while now, who's a really good player, shore up the lineup a little bit. He was probably the best bat that was available in terms of rentals for trade. So they're gearing up and they're seeing what they can do. So I respect the team for going for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think once they said that, and the players put themselves in this position. It was funny because Stroman a few weeks ago said, I don't look at it as though if you play really well over a 7 to 10 day stretch that should change your mentality. I think it totally did with his team.
Yep.
I understand what he was saying, because he has made his negotiations very public this year, right? He has said, I haven't heard anything from the team. I love being a Cub. I want to be here. They should extend me and Cody Bellinger. That's what they should do. They've got a nice wave of young talent. They've made some nice free agent signings in recent years. We feel like we're right on the precipice of turning this thing around. And now it would be ironic if he was the reason that they couldn't take that next step. His July has been terrible. His last 7 starts, he's given up 30 earned in 30 innings. That's a rough go for him, dude.
Yeah, it's tough. And especially when you start talking about extensions and things like that publicly, that really puts the pressure on you. So for him, there's probably a lot of things on his mind, and hopefully he gets back to just, being the best pitcher he can be for the Chicago Cubs and put them in a really good spot to move forward. They've got a shot at the division too. They're not just looking at the wild card. So, they've got a big series this weekend. They've already dropped the opener. Or what day is it? It's Tuesday this week, early week. Yeah, sorry, I don't know what day it is anymore. I just know that I have work today. I have rehab. That's my day. That's all I know.
Well, by the way, that's not uncommon. There are a lot, like, you totally lose sense of time when you're playing Major League Baseball season, don't you?
Yeah, it doesn't matter what day it is, because you either have work that day or you don't. What time is the game? That's all you know. And sometimes you don't even know that until you get the schedule for the next day.
Do you have guys that are really confused about like what time games are?
Oh yeah. There's plenty of times when you're leaving the clubhouse and guys are wondering, hey, what time is it tomorrow? Or especially when it's like a Thursday game, but it's a travel day, because then you never know, because some teams will screw you and you play at 7. So then you get to the next city at like 3 or 4 a.m. For the ticket sales. And then sometimes you get lucky and you have like a Thursday 1 o'clock game where you can get to the next city and get some dinner and actually go to sleep on time. So yeah, it's funny. I don't know how teams do, like, now I would love to do this one day, and that's the plan, is to play on like Sunday night baseball, Wednesday night baseball, like the featured games where the travel sucks, but you're featured because you're really good. That'd be great. But yeah, those make it tougher on the old body schedule.
Hey, dare to dream, brother. Dare to dream.
That's right. That's right.
One last thing I want to say about Stroh. And you don't have to talk to the media. That is your choice as a big leaguer. There's no rule that says you have to go. But he has been in front of the microphone during the good times this year. Last night, he left the locker room without speaking to the media. And I know that there's a lot going on. He's probably frustrated that he has not gotten his extension. There's still, I suppose, could be a possibility that he gets traded today. I don't think so, but if somebody knocks their socks off, he could be a goner. I would have liked to have heard from him last night, because there is a lot going on. And I just feel like that's a tough look.
Yeah, it is. As a teammate too, you always want your guys to be accountable, because the quicker guys get to their locker, the quicker the media is out of the locker room. So, and Chicago media is tough, but at the end of the day, people have jobs to do. And if you have a tough day and you just have a tough one, or you've been having a tough stretch, people are going to want to talk to you and know what's going on. The same way when it's going well, they're going to want to talk to you, because there's stories to be written. People have jobs to do. So for me, it's one of those things where no matter who it is, no matter what's going on. Like, unless something personal is going on where you have to leave like quickly, that's a different story, obviously. But if something happens, you just got to be accountable for what you do, because the game's over at that point, right? You can't control what happened. It's already over. So you just got to control your next step. And people like guys that are accountable for what they do. And if you have a tough one, or if you have a great one, if you're the same person at your locker after the game, then normally it's quick and easy, and you just get it over with and you're done.
And you made a good point. We don't know if there's something going on in his life where he needed to get pulled away. That's a possibility. But he is a focal point of a story that's been going on for several months now in Chicago. And I just think, it doesn't have to deal with the fact that I've been in locker rooms and that's been part of my career. It's that at that point, we are the conduit to the fans. So the fans are wondering the same sort of things that we are, that get paid to cover the sport for a living. And at that point, we're the only ones, unless Marcus wanted to go on social media and speak his piece. He's entitled to do that as well. But just, I think saying something would have been beneficial for all sides. But whatever, that's just a small sidebar to the story. All right, I want to welcome everybody to the world of sports cards reimagined. So whether you're a brand new collector or you have shoeboxes full of cards in your attic, the Sports Card Investor app, it will completely change the way that you buy, sell, and collect. You can jumpstart your collection by finding the best prices of cards, your favorite players, helping you build a one-of-a-kind collection and save some dough along the way. You can easily track the value of your favorite cards. You find the best prices with eBay deals, see which players are on the rise, all from the palm of your hand. I tell you all the time, I check my stocks every day from the palm of my hand. You can do the same with your sports card collection. It's got up-to-date sales data on over 2 million cards. That means you're going to know exactly what your collection is worth and when to buy or sell. Where's it available? It's available for free in Google Play and the App Store. Reimagine how you collect and download the Sports Card Investor app today. You've got your own card somewhere, don't you?
I do.
Do you remember the first card you took as a big leaguer? Did they pose you nice?
No, I've never posed for one. I do remember the first one I got, though, but I've never posed for one.
Never posed for one? I thought they did that in spring training every year.
Well, I've done posing for pictures, but I never posed for a card.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
They just take the picture. All right.
Yeah.
Do they have an action shot of you trying to steal second? Is that what it is?
Trying to steal second. I've done nothing but steal second. I'm successful when I do it. I don't try. I do.
Excuse me.
I'm 1 for 1.
Sorry.
Off of our guy, Bo Naylor.
Oh, good call. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, that's because the ball wasn't 10 feet outside where he had to then spin around and throw, because he would have gotten
the base is in the Hall of Fame, so it doesn't matter. That base is in the Hall of Fame.
Good call. All right. You grew up a Yankee fan, didn't you?
I did.
Okay. Their offense continues to struggle. They lost to our boy Tyler Glasnow last night in the Tampa Bay Rays. Really weird Domingo Germán story that was kind of the centerpiece. He was supposed to start. He had a problem with a muscle under his armpit. Couldn't start. The doctors checked him out. He threw before the game. He said he was fine. So he wasn't available to start, but he ended up pitching 5 shutout innings out of the pen. So that was a really, really strange story. The bigger deal is that New York loses. They're now 10 back in the division. They're 3.5 out in the wild card. Here's Aaron Boone after the game.
Do you think that this team up to this point has done enough to show Cashman that it's worth buying before tomorrow?
I mean, that's the front office. And I mean, we have to, in fairness, we've had a ton of guys out, at obviously significant pieces out for extended period. That said, we got to put ourselves in a better position. We've got to play better, and that's what we're trying to control. And that's all we can do.
So Aaron sidestepped the question. I will ask you, do you think this team has shown Brian Cashman enough that they need to be buyers today?
I think the bigger question is, who are you going to go get other than pitching? Is there an impact bat on the market that you can go get? I don't think that there really is. So I don't know if it's necessarily about being buyers. It's who are you buying? Who are you going to get? And the injury thing, I get it, but don't the Angels have 16 of 26 players that were on the opening day roster on the injured list right now, and they're making a push? I don't know. The manager for the Orioles made some comment the other day about beating the Yankees and how he's got a better team now than he used to. People make so many excuses. It's so tired. But your job's to go win. It's the same thing that I would say about us right now with the Royals. It's like we've not done our job. The Yankees have not done their job. So they swept us, which good for them. But outside of us and the Athletics, they have a losing record. So I don't think they've done enough to prove that they should go all out and add a bunch of guys that are that are going to be rentals because they're in last place right now, and they're only 3.5 out of the wild card. So there is a chance, but they got to start playing better. And teams are just walking Judge right now, so it's hard for him to make an impact when teams aren't throwing to him.
Well, it's up to the other guys that did it last year that haven't done it this year. I mean, Anthony Rizzo's been in an unprecedented slide, and they continue to hit him toward the top of the order. And I would agree with you. Unless there's a guy that surprises us, and there's always one or two guys that move where you're like, really? That guy got traded? Maybe they're trying to do that because they do have some guys in the minor leagues that I think other teams would covet at this point. So is there an outfielder that's available who's got, that isn't a rental, that has time left on his contract? Because this is a semi-flawed roster. And I think Boston's going to make some moves today. I think Toronto's an awfully talented team. I'm worried about the Bo Bichette injury that we're going to find out later today. Tampa is making its moves to solidify its pitching staff, and they're hopeful that their bats will come back around. I wouldn't be surprised if they do something lineup-wise. And then the Orioles, we talked about it on yesterday's show with Plouffe. That lineup is World Series caliber. That bullpen is World Series caliber. I'll be curious to see if they make a huge push for somebody else at the top of their rotation. The Yankees are, to me, just another team. And I know it's hard for Yankees fans to hear that, but that's exactly what they are this year.
Yeah, hard to disagree with. And the Herman thing, I was actually watching this game live. That was so strange. I don't think I've ever seen anything like that. And the broadcasters were just as confused as everybody else, too. I don't think I've ever heard of that happening. But I guess Boone said that he was feeling good the previous day and that day, but he wasn't cleared in time to start. But he was cleared enough to throw 5 out of the pen. He threw well. He threw objectively well. So maybe there was just a little bit of trickery. It didn't work. I've never, that was very strange.
Well, just for clarification, they asked Boone if this was a sort of deal that it was strategic, and he said absolutely not. He said he reported a problem. The doctors checked him out. He wanted to go throw and see if he felt okay, which he did in the 6 o'clock hour. So less than an hour before first pitch, he was getting loose and stuff. And they said, well, could you have started him? And he said, no, he had just thrown at, 6:10 or whatever. Let's make up a number here. So that makes sense. That story, I think, makes sense, doesn't it?
I think it's still strange because normally you would just shut a guy down and have him throw the next day or get him in his next turn in the rotation. Just be like, hey, take it easy. But hey, it worked for him. Like personally, he had a good outing. So maybe they should do that more often with him and have him throw later and use a semi-opener to get him going. Who knows? Very strange. He's had some weird outings. Like he was like bad, perfect game, bad. Now he's in relief, kind of. Like it's kind of funny, like just kind of what's happened.
All right. By the time this thing airs podcast-wise and on our YouTube channel, I'm sure there will have been a bunch of trades made, so don't hold that against us just in terms of the timing of the show today. Who is the biggest name that's going to move?
Verlander. I think that's probably the obvious one. Just because him going back to Houston would be crazy to me because I know they had a bunch of pitching and the guys got hurt, but they could have just signed him. Like I don't know the whole story there, but I guess he would be a stopgap for them the next 2 years. I don't know why you wouldn't just keep him. I guess he wanted to go to New York probably, but yeah, he's probably the biggest name that's gonna be on the move.
Yeah, I would be curious to sit down and hear his thought process, right? You mentioned that he is from the Virginia area. He went to Old Dominion, Baltimore. How far is Baltimore from where he grew up?
Probably 3.5 hours, but like I don't know too many Orioles fans, if I'm being completely honest. It's a lot of Braves, a lot of Braves fans.
Yeah. No, I get it. And so we don't know how important something like that would be to him. We're not talking about a rental situation here. This is a minimum of a 1.5 year commitment for him and his family. That's why I do think LA's probably appealing. I have heard for years that he wants to join the Fox broadcast team, maybe even in the booth when he's done playing. That would allow him to start to develop a relationship. You know, his brother works at Fox. I don't know how far along that sort of situation is, but that could factor into what he's doing. Plus, it's not like he's joining a horseshit team.
I saw a very funny tweet yesterday. I don't know who it was by, but that said there's two clauses in his no trade, and that's that he has to accept it, and then they have to pass it through to Ben, and he also has to accept the trade to make sure it's okay. And I thought that was just really, really funny. So I just wanted to throw that out there. But yeah, that will definitely be an interesting one. Like all these guys are getting no trade clauses, and then they waive them, which kind of begs the question of like, why did you do the no trade in the first place if you were just going to waive it in year one? I know you're going to go try to win. I get that, but like
it allows you to determine where you go. It allows you to have some pull.
I agree, and I thought the coolest thing with the no trade was when Hosmer blocked the original Soto deal, because it was like, I don't want to go to DC. Like, he didn't want to go. Like, for the players, that's great when guys actually exercise it. And it's still great when they have the power to say, yeah, I don't want to go there, or I will waive it here. But has anybody confirmed that if Baltimore was in on it, that he will waive it? Because that's a massive deal.
Not yet. By the way, do you think when Max Scherzer signed on the dotted line with the Mets a couple of years ago, he thought he'd be pitching in Arlington, Texas for them?
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy how things change.
Yeah,
and I'd be curious to see, just like tax wise, how much more money he's making right now, like in Texas. Like his salary I feel like almost doubled from what he was making in New York to go to Texas. I know just from getting my checks when we go to Texas or we go to New York or something, how much more or less that my check shows. So it'll be interesting to see for him what kind of money he's making now.
The things we don't think about. By the way, I'm going to throw this name out there, and I know they're back in it, although they suffered another tough loss. They still haven't won a game in extra innings after last night. I think Josh Hader might be on the move today. I have a feeling that somebody might call A.J. Preller and say, here you go. You can replenish your farm system, and I'll give you a reliever that will replace him, so he won't be a closer, but it'll help out.
He's a free agent. He's a free agent at the end of the year, right?
Yep.
Like how much does an elite closer get on the market as a rental? I know it's a lot, but like, can you replenish your farm system with that?
Maybe a little bit.
Also, like, I just keep thinking about the Padres. Like, Juan Soto's 24, 25. Like, I don't understand the theory of trading him to replenish your farm if he wants to be where he's at, because he is your farm. I know he's probably not going to get traded, but he's so young. Like, he's younger than me, and I was at his debut, and I was in college, which is a ridiculous thing to say. And I know we were talking about Hader, but I'm going on a tangent. It's
an amazing story.
Hader could move. I'm curious to see where he'd go. Like, who needs that? I mean, everybody needs that sort of reliever, which is why I still think it's interesting why you would trade an elite level closer, is because at some point you need a guy like that who's comfortable in the ninth inning. And it's like, the Padres are looking to make a run. I want you to help me win these close games. So if you're the Padres, your price better be high. And if a team hits it, then there you go. But if they don't, you move on and try to make the playoffs with him.
I just like it when big names move on a day like today. So maybe it's not that I think he moves, but maybe I don't even know if it's wishful thinking. I don't know what I want at this point. I'm just so confused. All right, before we get out of here on the podcast and YouTube side of things, Shane Bieber injured for the Cleveland Guardians these days. He was driving back from dinner with his wife. He saw a bunch of kids in a neighborhood playing wiffle ball, decided to pull over, signed some things, maybe hit a wiffle ball or two. Hopefully he didn't throw anything, and particularly not a slider. But it was a cool moment for the kids who loved it. It's a great little Instagram story out there. Very touching. Who was the first big leaguer you remember meeting?
As a kid, I never really met any. So the first big leaguers I really met was after I got drafted, seeing some of the guys that I worked out with in the offseason that were big leaguers. That was really it. There was a coach at my facility that I worked out who I believe he had a day in the big leagues, so I think he counts.
I was expecting like some big story where here's little Vinnie Pasquantino at a game. Please sign my ball. Nothing?
No, like I got a baseball from a Ryan Dempster bullpen one time. Mike Maddox threw me the ball, but I never met him. He just threw me the ball. So there was that. Trying to think of, but yeah, that's it. There's no exciting stories from my childhood from meeting guys. But that's that video. No way that was in Cleveland, right? The sunset was way too nice.
Shut your mouth, okay? That was very, very nice. It's a beautiful. This is a wonderful time of year, especially when there's no humidity. And there are stunning neighborhoods, depending on where you are. I don't want to give away too much, but
no, I just had to throw that dig at you. It just looked really nice. I know that there's some areas around that are super nice. I just wanted to throw that at you.
Enjoy the rest of your summer on the sun in Kansas City, by the way.
Yeah, it's really hot.
For me, summer camp, I'm going to say probably like 1980 day camp. They used to bring in like a good guest speaker every year. Ours was Jerry Dybzinski, who was didn't play a ton in the bigs, but was a Cleveland kid. I want to say he went to Benedictine High School, maybe, but he came.
Hey, we've got a Benedictine too.
Yeah, so he spoke to us, and there was trivia, and they were giving signed Jerry Dybzinski baseballs, and of course, I knew the answer to every question, so I put my hand up, and they didn't fucking call on me. I wanted one of those Jerry Dybzinski signed baseballs.
Yeah.
Piss me off. Whatever. I'm sure I've gotten over it by this time.
Yeah, you're all right.
All right. So we're going to be back at it again tomorrow, podcast YouTube side of things, to break down all the zaniness of the trade deadline, okay?
Yep. Yeah, maybe there's a few teammates of mine that I'll talk about tomorrow if they get traded. Who knows?
You never know. For our one-of-a-kind producer, Dan Rourke, and the uber-talented Vinnie Pasquantino, even though he's taking shots at my hometown, I am Chris Rose. We will see you Wednesday on Baseball Today.